Paris, January 21st, 1976. The clock struck 12:40 p.m. local time. On the runway at Charles de Gaulle Airport in France, a plane was taking off to make history. This wasn't just any flight. It was the first commercial flight of the Concorde, the world's first supersonic passenger aircraft. Its destination? Rio de Janeiro, across the Atlantic. But that wasn't the only historic flight of the day. In London, at the same time, another Concorde was taking off for Bahrain, marking a joint debut by Air France and British Airways. The two airlines had decided to launch their supersonic services simultaneously, a true feat of engineering and diplomacy. The Concorde promised not only to shorten physical distances, but to usher in a new era of civil aviation. For the first time, ordinary passengers could fly faster than sound, making intercontinental travel much quicker than anyone had ever dreamed. The idea of crossing the Atlantic in just a few hours seemed like the dawn of a revolution in how the world was connected. The promise was that long, tiring, and time-consuming journeys would be replaced by fast and comfortable flights. However, what seemed like the beginning of a new era was quickly interrupted. After just a few decades of operation, the Concorde was retired. The supersonic dream, which was supposed to dominate the skies of the 20th century, was never fully realized. And, surprisingly, since then, no other supersonic commercial aircraft has taken the place of the Concorde. The end of the Concorde left a sense of stagnation in commercial aviation. It felt like airplanes had stopped evolving. But why did the Concorde, a marvel of engineering, cease to exist? To understand this, we have to go back to the beginning of aviation history. The desire to fly has always been part of human imagination. In ancient Greece, nearly 2,500 years ago, the mathematician Archytas of Tarentum created a flying prototype called the dove. Though rudimentary and unmanned, this device is considered one of the earliest recorded attempts to build a flying machine. Powered possibly by compressed air, it is said to have glided for about 656 feet. In the following century, the Chinese also made contributions to the world of aviation by inventing the kite, which is still enjoyed around the world today. These early inventions, while fascinating, were far from realizing the dream of transporting humans. It was in the 15th century that one of humanity's greatest geniuses, Leonardo da Vinci, made significant strides in this field. He designed a series of flying machines, including the ornithopter, which mimicked the movement of bird wings. Although his ideas were visionary, the technology of the time was not advanced enough to bring these machines to life. Despite these early steps, the real revolution in aviation happened in the early 20th century, with the invention of the airplane by the Wright brothers in 1903. The first flight was short and depended on favorable winds and rails for takeoff. However, throughout the century, aviation advanced rapidly, driven largely by war. World War I saw the development of faster, more efficient planes, with speeds doubling compared to earlier models. After the war, the first major airlines were established, including Air France, KLM, and Lufthansa, which are still operating today. The 1930s were considered the golden age of aviation. With technological advancements, planes became safer and more comfortable, with pressurized cabins and new navigation systems. However, World War II was a period of intense development in military aviation. Planes were used for military strategies, espionage, and bombings. The height of this tragic development was the use of planes to drop atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. During the war, another major innovation in aviation was the jet engine, which allowed planes to fly at speeds close to 620 miles per hour. This technological leap paved the way for the commercial airplanes that would dominate global travel in the following decades. While conventional commercial planes were limited to those speeds, the idea of creating an aircraft that could break the sound barrier began to gain momentum. It was in this context that, in the 1960s, engineers and scientists began working on the Concorde. The idea was to create an aircraft capable of flying at 745 miles per hour, meaning it could surpass the speed of sound. It was an extremely ambitious project, so much so that while the Concorde was being developed in the West, the Soviet Union was also creating its own supersonic aircraft, the Tupolev Tu-144. In 1969, the Tupolev became the first plane to break the sound barrier, beating the Concorde in the race. Despite the initial success, the Tupolev faced many problems, including a tragic accident during a demonstration flight that killed several people. As a result, the Concorde became more closely associated with the supersonic era, even though the Tupolev had been the first to achieve that milestone. The Concorde began operating in 1976 and quickly became a symbol of luxury and innovation. Flying on the Concorde was, well, a unique experience. Although the seats were a bit cramped, the onboard service offered luxury and sophistication, with dishes like lobster and caviar served alongside champagne. Additionally, a screen on the plane displayed to passengers when the aircraft reached the speed of sound, a moment always celebrated with excitement. Flying from London to New York in under 3.5 hours was an impressive feat, especially compared to conventional flights, which took about 8 hours. However, flying on the Concorde wasn't for everyone. Tickets cost more than $10,000, making them accessible only to a small elite. And it wasn't just the ticket prices that were high. The Concorde's fuel consumption was enormous, with the aircraft burning around 6,600 gallons of fuel per hour of flight. This, combined with the rising oil prices in the 1970s, made the Concorde economically unviable. But what truly sealed the fate of the Concorde was a fatal accident in 2000 when an Air France flight crashed shortly after takeoff, killing all 109 people on board. This accident, combined with the global aviation crisis following the 9/11 attacks in 2001, led to the retirement of the Concorde in 2003. With the end of the Concorde, an era of supersonic travel came to a close, and to this day, no commercial aircraft has replaced it. Still, the desire to fly fast hasn't died. Boom Supersonic, an American company, is developing the Overture, a new supersonic plane that promises to reach 1.7 times the speed of sound, or about 1,118 miles per hour. The project is still in the testing phase, with the first commercial flights expected to occur in 2029. Major airlines, including American Airlines and Japan Airlines, have already ordered units of the Overture in the hope of reviving supersonic travel. While we wait for the return of flights beyond the speed of sound, aviation continues to advance in other areas, such as sustainability. Boeing, for instance, is testing innovative technologies with its Eco Demonstrator project, which aims to make planes more eco-friendly by using biofuels and reducing the environmental impact of flights. So, even though commercial planes today aren't as fast as they were with the Concorde, the future of aviation is far from stagnant. Whether on Earth, with new technologies and more efficient planes, or in space, with companies exploring new frontiers, the dream of flying farther and faster is still very much alive. After all, the sky isn't the limit, it's just the beginning. Until next time, and I hope you enjoyed this journey through the world of aviation.